Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Coffee and Football, presented by John Donovan and Longhorn Wealth Management Group. I'm your host, Blake Monroe, where I'm joined by Bobby Burton and CJ Vogel, who's filling in for Jerry Hamilton as he hits the road. And guys, we got a lot to talk about this morning. Tell us where you're checking in from, what you're drinking, get your questions in. We're also 40 days away from kickoff, as Rob Enfield says here. So tell us who your favorite number 40 is. We'll come back to that here in a little bit. But first, as I said, we do have a lot to talk about this morning, guys. Let's back up to yesterday in recruiting when Texas got a big commitment.
Big time commitment. We've talked about Texas needing a kind of a workhorse running back and a true number one. Yesterday evening around 6 o'clock Central Time, Derrick Cooper out of Miami, Hollywood, Florida, announced for the Longhorns over Ohio State, Miami, Georgia, Florida State, etc. He is perhaps the top running back in the country, if not the best. One of the top two or three. Has tremendous speed and size. He is 6'1", 205, 210 pounds, and ran a 10.7 100 meter in high school. He is the number 2 ranked player in the industry composite in the state of Florida. Guess who number 1 is, by the way, CJ? It's Diabell. So Texas now has commitments from the top 2 players in the state of Florida. And frankly, there's another one that Texas has a commitment from that is ranked higher by some services, and that is James Johnson, the defensive tackle out of Miami Northwestern. So Texas doing extremely good work in South Florida, and they get the big-time running back they needed in Derrick Cooper. I think this is a big pickup because it continues Texas's when Sark needs good players, it's one thing to get a good player. It's another thing to get a great player. You know, they needed linebackers. They go out and get a guy that's Tyler Atkinson's 475 tackles. They go out and get Diabell, number 1 ranked quarterback in the country. They've done John Turntine, Jerry's number 1 ranked offensive tackle. When they need something, they're not just going out and filling it. They're filling it with elite players and prospects that can be true difference makers when it comes game time.
I think you mentioned it there. Difference makers is the big key for me. And yes, Texas has had a plethora of guys added to the class that are really good football players, but how many can be instant game changers or difference makers from the moment that they step foot on campus? It's tough to find those guys, especially with the depth that Texas has now on its roster, but it's hard not to watch a Derrick Cooper at 6'1", 210 and say, I can't envision him seeing the, meaningful game time immediately, especially with the way that some of these, kind of theories about whether or not Trey Wisner, CJ Baxter could depart for the NFL after this upcoming season. This is a huge addition, and watching his tape is really fun because the minute he gets through the line of scrimmage, more times than not, he's gone, right? That burst in the second level with the vision to make a linebacker or safety miss in the hole. That's a tough thing to do, and he's only going to continue to add weight. 6'1.5", 220 pounds. That's certainly looking like what he will get to at times during his Texas career. And at 10.7, well, there's the continuation of the theme of jumbo athletes, which Texas has added plenty of over the last year and a half on the recruiting trail as well. That was a huge, huge win for the Longhorns on the trail. And for Chad Scott, I'm sure it was a monkey off his back, right? Now it's time to move forward in recruiting as well.
Hey, I've got Jerry obviously not with us. He actually started driving home around 5 o'clock Central this morning from South Florida. So he's already 3 hours into a 12-hour drive today. But he did relay some things last night, CJ and Blake, that I think I want to bring up here this morning to everybody who may have missed our coverage. First of all, Jerry had visited and went to see Derrick Cooper back in the spring when they were working out spring practice, etc. Chad Scott, the Texas running back coach, happened to be there on the same day Jerry was down in South Florida visiting all those players. He said that you mentioned how he just darted through the line, CJ. Chad Scott was apparently at practice that day. Jerry saw him, and they ran an outside zone play. And Chad Scott, as Texas coaches do, they actually filmed some of these players' practices. Well, Derrick Cooper took an outside zone play 75 yards to the house and just turned it on, and Chad Scott abruptly stopped filming. He had seen enough that they knew that was going to happen. The other thing I wanted to mention that Jerry brought up, Bijan Robinson apparently had at least one conversation with Derrick Cooper during this process as well, the former Texas running back. And I think that speaks loudly, frankly, to Steve Sarkeesian and what he's kind of building, because we've talked at length on this program, guys, about how players recruit players. It's one thing for a coach to recruit you. It's another when a peer or a near peer, somebody that's just been through it, starts talking to you about it, because they can give you the ins and outs of how things work. I think that was most interesting, one of the more interesting nuggets Jerry put out there yesterday after talking with Derrick Cooper. And then last, thanks for bringing this up, Blake. Brandon Harris yesterday tweeted this out right after the commitment. You know, we can talk about, and I wrote this on Texas Football this morning, we can talk about NIL, we can talk about relationships, etc. But when you can prove to somebody that you can do it, like Steve Sarkeesian and his staff have in developing running backs, Brandon Harris writes, 5 running backs drafted in the last 3 years. Why don't you think about that? And if I would say this, if somehow Wisner and Baxter were to go pro this year and be drafted, CJ, that'd be 7 and 4.
I don't know if that's ever been done, Bob.
If you're a running back, how could that not be attractive?
Yeah.
I mean, that's so talking about how you prepare, Sark prepares his running backs for the NFL. And he did that, by the way, I want to say this. He did that before and after Tashard choice. So it's not just Tashard. So my point being, a lot of good stuff going on there for the Longhorns and their commitment of Derrick Cooper.
Bobby, before we move on, can you let everyone know about our sponsor today, John Donovan and Longhorn Wealth Management Group?
Absolutely. John is a proud Texas Ex's Life member whose wife and 6 siblings are also UT grads. It's a family passion that led John to brand his firm, Longhorn Wealth Management, and dedicated to providing investment, retirement, insurance, and estate planning services and solutions to Longhorn families and friends across the nation. John was actually in the chat last night waiting to see what would happen with Derrick Cooper. He is pumped. I talked to him afterwards. He's pumped about not only Cooper, but Tyler Atkinson, as well as James Johnson. And now we have a top 5 class, he says. John wants to celebrate that success by offering all OTF fans the opportunity to take advantage of a free 90-minute private consultation with John to learn how working with a certified financial planner can help you maximize your wealth, minimize your taxes, and ensure your legacy. Call the Longhorn Wealth Team, 972-707-4900, or go online, www.longhornwealth.net, to schedule your free 90-minute private consultation. Longhorn Wealth Management, 972-707-4900.
Thank you, Bobby. More to get to this morning, guys. Obviously, coaching school going on in San Antonio. CJ, you and Jeff were there on the boots on the ground. What were some of your main takeaways from yesterday?
Yeah, Chad Scott, I guess before his celebrations on the nightcap, he spoke earlier in the afternoon down in San Antonio to a really healthy group of college or of high school coaches. And then Mark Orphe sat down and spoke with a number of guys as well. I got to sit down on Mark Orphe's lecture, and it was pretty interesting. You know, I hadn't really thought about the change in philosophies at the cornerback position. It's all just, hey, backpedal, don't let the ball get caught, right? But there's different ways to teach that, and that was one of the big interesting things for me. They go by an acronym of CAT, and that's contact, agility, and technique. Each day there's some sort of tackling, some sort of hitting on the outside from his cornerbacks and his defensive backs, right? You don't often see that emphasized at the college level, but there's a true emphasis on hitting and being physical on the outside. And then, of course, agility. That's your footwork. That's your backpedaling. That's learning how to break at different angles, and technique. That all encompassing there. But how do you run? How do you turn and play through the hands? It was pretty interesting listening to him talk. Coach Orfe showed a number of different clips from Texas practices highlighting all sorts of different cornerbacks as well. We saw clips from Wardell Mack, Warren Roberson, Manny Muhammad, Kobe Black had a number. Cade Phillips was a teach tape king, essentially, in terms of what we saw from his technical side in practice. So it was pretty interesting. The one thing that I really enjoyed hearing from Coach Orfe is at the end of every agility drill, at the end of every break drill in which they, backpedal 10 yards, run 5, turn around, run another 5, whatever it is, there's always a ball being thrown to the Texas cornerbacks. And I don't think corners get enough of that, right? You normally hear the saying all the time, you play cornerback because you can't catch, right? Otherwise, you'd be at wide receiver. And that's one of the things I think is, Coach Orfe and his GA group is trying to eliminate. Hey, we're going to be able to catch the football and turn interceptions into pick sixes. We're going to turn PBUs and INTs. And so that was one of the things I sat there writing down on my notes saying they're going to emphasize taking the ball away one way or the other, because there's been times, especially early in the Sarkeesian tenure, where we're saying it's just not in their technique to turn around and play the ball. They play through the hands, and sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. But that's going to be a big emphasis under Mark Orfe, and I'm eager to see how that results into interceptions, because after a secondary like we saw a year ago on the field, we know how big those interceptions can be for the Longhorns.
CJ, you also were at the Steve Sarkeesian open mic session. We have that entire interview, I guess, and speaking engagement from Coach Sarkeesian up on our site right now on the YouTube channel on Texas Football. If you want to go watch that, it's about 25 minutes long of him speaking. What were some of your key takeaways for Steve Sarkeesian and what he had to say, CJ? Because I listened to it and I felt like it was just a good overview of what we had to look forward to. He even said at one point he was talking about getting ready for Ohio State, and he said it's going to be, they used to take time and do that for Alabama because it was the second game. They may take a few days. Now it's going to be, or looks like it's going to be, almost 2 full weeks of Ohio State prep since Ohio State's the first game out of the gate. Anything else that you heard him say that kind of caught your attention?
Oh, well, let's start there, because I think that gives a good landscape into what the month of August will look like. Of course, Texas will be on the field to start its fall camp July 30th. And then those first 2 weeks are going to essentially just be teaching everything, right? Schemes, assignments, adjustments, calls, coverages, everything. It's just teaching. And then those next 2 weeks, much like you've mentioned, Bobby, they've looked ahead to that Michigan game, to that Alabama game, and started implementing specific game plans for that game right away. Normally in week 2, now obviously you don't get the luxury of a warm-up game to get into the big marquee. You're starting week 1 at Ohio State in the Horseshoe. So those next 2 weeks leading up to Ohio State will all be designed to basically be the game plan implementation for Ohio State and what the Longhorns will need whenever they travel up to Columbus. So I thought that was really interesting. Of course, anytime you can kind of get a lay of the land on a schedule-wise from the Texas staff, you don't normally get that. So that's what the month of August will look like, of course, before August 30th. But on top of that, look, he talked a lot about NIL. He talked a lot about recruiting the state of Texas and going nationally. And that's been a carryover from what we've seen in Atlanta, in which I had the same question to him. How do you balance recruiting the state of Texas while recruiting nationally as well? But man, that seemed to be the overall theme, is how do you carry on this recruiting success that you've had recently and make sure that your backyard is being taken care of, especially in front of all these Texas high school coaches who I'm sure would love to see their kid end up at the with a Longhorn on their helmet.
All right. And talking about that, Sark recruiting the state of Texas, CJ, we actually have a video clip of that I am going to play, because that's also been a hot topic in our chat as of late, is why is Texas recruiting more Texas players? And Sark,
numerous times, I think as much as people view us and maybe some other schools in our state for recruiting out of the state, I think a lot of schools are recruiting in our state as well. And a lot of players are a lot more apt to leave the state. And it's going to be something I talk about here today that I think we all and I'm going to praise all the programs because really what Coach Elko is doing at A&M, what Rhett has been doing at SMU, the commitment, obviously, what Joey's doing at Tech, what Dave Aranda's been doing at Baylor, the track record of Willie, of the success he's had. Houston's going to get going. There's so many great programs in our state. I don't know that kids need to leave, but I do think that kids need guidance of why they should stay. And there's a lot of advantages to that, which I won't get into. But our boat's not different than most.
So there you go.
Good stuff. I mean, look, he's right. And that was part of my article this morning. And I is, Texas for almost 2 decades really hasn't, at least 2 decades 3 decades really since I've been covering this. They used to hit some big names out of state. Ricky Williams, Southern California. Bryant Westbrook, Southern California. But they never went as hard as Sark is doing it now. Okay? Even with Mac Brown, where he went and got Chris Sims, he wouldn't consecutively do it. He would do it 1 or 2 guys, maybe a Lamar Houston or something like that, maybe a send line or a stutter. My point being that Texas is emphasizing out-of-state recruiting more. Perhaps it's because they're in the SEC and there's a natural segue into that territory of the country that is so talent-rich, so to speak, right? I mean, Texas now has commitments from Louisiana. In this class alone, just take I-10 and go east. Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, and Florida. Okay, that's never happened in my career. Okay, that Texas has commitments from each of those states. And I feel like, we talk about this. What's happened a little bit is people are now shocked to see Texas kind of spreading its wings a little bit, because for so long it was so hyper-focused on Texas and keeping all that in-state talent home. That was the proverbial question for Texas recruiting. Can you keep all the in-state talent home? Well, in the meantime, Georgia, Florida, Notre Dame, Michigan, Ohio State, USC were all cherry-picking 1 or 2 players from the state of Texas. So what's wrong with Texas now cherry-picking 1 or 2 players from the other states? Absolutely nothing. Because and it surprises people, but I wrote today, I think about 5 years ago, and probably starting with Arch, Texas, they awakened a sleeping recruiting giant with Steve Sarkeesian. That's what's happened. Texas has a national brand, but they weren't necessarily utilizing it from a recruiting perspective nationally. Now they are. And people are kind of shocked by it. Well, so what? It's to the advantage of the Longhorns. And I think A&M has been recruiting out of state for a good decade since it went into the SEC. And there was no cry about A&M going out of state. Obviously, Texas is the state university, the flagship university of the state, so there's going to be a little bit more media focus on that. But I think what Sark's doing right now is just trying to get the best team and product he can do, and he thinks by going out of state he can do that. And so, who's there to debate him? Has there been a more talented Texas roster in my, I don't know about my lifetime, but I don't know that there's been a more talented Texas roster in the last 20 years. That's for sure, and that includes some really, really good football teams. And I'm talking about 1 to 85, not necessarily 1 to 30 or 1 to 25. But Texas has a deep roster right now, and part of that is because they have successfully gone out of state.
Yeah, I don't mean to put you on the spot here, Bobby, but following the number 1 recruiting class a year ago, following some of the recent success on the trail over the last week and a half or so, Texas climbing back up into that top 10, right there on that top 5 fringe. Are we still looking at a class that should or could or potentially would finish in that top 2, 3, 4 range at the moment?
Jerry follows that a lot more closely than I do. I mean, that's his game. You know what I mean? But what he has always contended is Texas will probably have a top 5 range class. You're not going to commit to exactly number 5 or number 2 or 3 or 7 or whatever, but in that range. But I think what's interesting that Jerry brought up to me last night is the amount of runway Texas has left in this class.
Yeah.
Texas only has 21 commitments, and they're currently ranked, at least by one service, number 4 in the country. Okay. So Texas has 21 commitments. By comparison, the number 1 and 2 ranked class right now are USC and Georgia. Well, they have 31 and 30 commitments, respectively. That's a lot of runway left for Texas. So where does Texas end up? I mean, CJ, you and I both know that some guys are going to have to shake loose from their commitments probably to get Texas back up there. Texas is going to probably have to unearth some other guys they like, etc. But I don't expect Texas to sign 30 to 31 though.
Right.
The runway is 5 to 7 more players. I don't think it's 10. And so the runway is there, but it's not as deep as maybe as what Georgia and USC are doing this year.
Yeah. And one other note, I know a lot of folks look at the recruiting number, the average ranking for a lot of these kids as well, minus the specialists, because I know specialists kind of, knock that number down, that average down quite a bit. No disrespect to the specialists because they're valuable. But Texas right now, the 3rd highest average class given position players behind just Georgia and LSU, Oregon and LSU at the moment. That's a pretty good class in terms of top talent leading the way. And I'm with you, Bobby, on the future runway for this group as well.
Yeah.
Well, Texas football isn't the only program enjoying a little success as of recently, guys. One person that we need to talk about in particular.
Woo!
How about that?
He walked away with that thing, man. Did y'all watch it? I watched a little bit of it on Sunday. It was like the least there was no suspense, no drama. I mean, after the 8th hole, I mean, literally there was nothing to even sweat about.
No.
Like the closest anybody came was 4 strokes. That just doesn't happen in major tournaments.
He's ruining golf, Bobby.
What's that?
He's ruining golf. He's too good. Where's the Sunday suspense?
Oh, look at this stat. This was the stat that I could not believe. Thanks for bringing it up. Scottie Scheffler is 111 under par in majors since 2020, since the start of 2020. That is 46 shots better than anyone else in that span.
That's unbelievable.
I mean, what? He's been the greatest player in golf. I mean, I know everybody knows that now, that he's a great golfer, but that is an amazing stat. 111. Next person is what? Minus 55? 55 under? That's crazy.
That's how dominant as it gets.
Yeah.
I didn't watch Sunday, obviously down at the Texas High School Coaches Association, but I felt like I watched the championship one on Saturday, in which he's stretched that lead out to about 4 or 5 strokes. That's when I was like, okay, it's done. He's not going to blow a 5-stroke lead. And evidently he did not. So congratulations to Scottie. I know the Longhorns had 4 guys in the field this weekend at the Open. So look, Longhorn success ranges beyond just the gridiron into the professional golf world as well. That's pretty cool to see.
Same amount of time it took Tiger to win his first 4 majors, it took Scottie. So that when I wrote this, when you talk about rarefied air, that's rarefied air. Let's just put it that way. I mean, Hogan, guy names that there are golf courses named after, basically.
Yeah,
that's where he's at right now.
Oh man, hey, this is a good question right here. While we're talking about Scheffler, Z Holly says best professional Longhorn athlete ever. Could it be KD, Clemens? He said Scheffler is definitely up there. Who would be your pick?
That's a great question. Look, I mean, Scottie, as we just talked about, might be in a trajectory to be on the Mount Rushmore of the sport if he keeps this up another 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 years. I know that's a heavy ask, but look, right now, the way that he's playing, he's undoubtedly the best in the sport, and he's been doing so for a while. Roger Clemens with, 7 Cy Youngs, Blake? I mean, he dominated the late 80s, early 90s. I pitched into even when I was a toddler running around. So that's pretty darn remarkable. And then Kevin Durant, one of the greatest scorers in NBA history. I got to go with Roger Clemens, the Rocket. Just that longevity, dominant.
Yeah, and I will say this. Those two sports, basketball and baseball, as well as golf, lend themselves to longer tenures, if that makes sense. Like what's the average lifespan, not lifespan, but average professional span of a football player? 2.5 years. Compared to a baseball player, they could play for into their mid 40s. I will just say this: the most dominating professional athlete I've ever seen that was a Longhorn was actually Earl Campbell. And now it wasn't for 10 years is the problem, because he was so beat up. But you got to remember, he was NFL MVP for 2 years. I don't know if, while Roger Clemens was the most dominating, and Roger Clemens could be the most dominating pitcher. Pedro Martinez was up there as well, but in that era. But I don't know. For me, it was Earl. But again, if you're talking about longevity, that's where I think Roger, KD, those guys get involved.
A lot of people torn on Earl or the Rocket.
Well, here's my question. Was Roger Clemens the best baseball pitcher alive for a period of time? The answer is yes, right? Has at any time Kevin Durant been the best basketball player alive? I think he's competed for it, right? But I don't know that Earl was the best football player alive for a certain period of time. Roger Clemens was the best baseball pitcher alive for a certain period of time. I would probably, even though KD's going to have all kinds of scoring records, I would, and he's a freak, don't get me wrong, he would certainly be on the Mount Rushmore. But that's what I was thinking.
That's where I go, Todd Lacey. 7 Cy Youngs, tough to beat.
Yep.
That's domination.
Good answers in the chat for sure. Okay, guys. Bobby, before we move on, I'm going to let you tell everyone about one of our other sponsors today in Duck Camp.
Yeah, absolutely. Duck Camp is back with us this year. Thank you so much to those guys over there. Duck Camp gear is made for the people that live for the moments out there where there are fish to catch, birds to hunt, time to kill, and football to watch. They like doing all that stuff, so they built a company centered on it. It's based in Austin, dedicated, giving people best-in-class hunting and fishing apparel. Duck Camp has been tested from the backcountry of Alaska to the Dove Fields of Texas, ready to keep you comfortable, cool on those scorcher game days. It will stand up to the toughest conditions, but also happily sit down beside a fire and drink a few cold ones if that's more your speed. Some of their featured items include sun protection shirts that keep you cool, dry, and comfy, available in camos and solid colorways, and their iconic Game Series hats that feel as timeless as the hats found in your grandpa's garage. Be sure to check out the new Mallard hat and Pointer hat in the clay colorway. That clay colorway is pretty much our cherished burnt orange color. Here's your great seasons, y'all. Yes, hunting and football. Shop hunting gear at duckcamp.com.
Good stuff there. We got super chats that we need to jump into this morning, and we got a lot of them. They are stacking up. I would say get the big hat out, get the lampshade out. If Rod was here, I'd say get the football helmet out. Oh, man. All right. So MP Houston, thank you for your very generous super chat. He says, regarding Ag's revisionist history lately, how close last year's game was. YouTube linked to Texas coverage after the game. D. Nuno says at the start, the Aggies got their butts kicked, guys. The game was not as close as the score indicated.
Amen. I mean, I've been talking about this forever. I mean, Texas had the ball inside the 10, and one was a pick six, and the other was a fumble. Now, A&M got stopped twice in the red zone too. But look, A&M didn't score an offensive point. A&M didn't move the ball at all after the first drive of the game. I mean, am I wrong about that? I mean, they did not move the ball after the first drive of the game. I know
their
I'm not wrong.
revisionist history and our revisionist history of that game, I think, is a little bit funny. It's just the whole, no, it was only a 14 or what, 10-point game. Well, completely different ways to look back at that game. How about this quote? Because I just pulled it up because I wanted to go back down memory lane, our own revisionist history. Quote, hats off to them because they physically annihilated us. Tell me if that sounds like a game that was close, because it doesn't sound like it to me. And that quote came exactly or directly from Mike Elko. So if that's where this conversation's been going, is that, hey, it wasn't that big of a blowout, that big of a discrepancy, fine. Just go ahead and throw that quote out there from the man himself who watched his team get dominated for 60 minutes.
Yeah, the Longhorns whipped that Aggie butt in College Station. That's his bottom line. They can try to recreate history however they want, but anybody that watched that game knows who the better team was. And CJ used the term physical, or Elko used the term physical. Yes, I agree.
Our next super chat this morning from Maddie M. Thank you, Maddie. Says, good morning, OTF. Great coverage as always. Bobby, I wanted to clarify something you said recently. You said that players going to the NFL would free up funds for 2026 recruits, but wouldn't that be after early signing, and would it be too late?
No, because you have to realize that if some of them leave early, some of these players are not mid-year grads. So it wouldn't have anything to do with mid-year grad or guys that are going to be mid-year enrollees. But if they're summer enrollees, you got to remember they won't enroll until June, and that time frame is June 30th. It rolls into July is when their school year is over, and when each person or when each team's salary cap restarts. So if you're a June enrollee for the University of Texas, not a mid-year now. Mid-years are different, but a June enrollee, it would change your number and the availability of funds.
And then our next super chat this morning is from Taylor Johnson. Thank you, Taylor. Taylor says, I've learned Georgia fans are some of the most insufferable humans the last few days. My God, everyone pays players. We're just coming to topple the mountain. Hook 'em.
Look, I've been workshopping this take for a while, and I've been surprised by Georgia fans and kind of the outrage recently. I figured that they would be more accustomed to some of these high-profile recruiting battles, whether some they win, whether some they lose. But we talk about that Georgia-Texas rivalry and what it needs to take to get to that level. Well, I think it's there. The outrage that I've seen personally in my mentions has been rather ridiculous. I feel like this is something that they'd be accustomed to, having been a top recruiter, having been a top school in the country. The outrage has been there, and they've it's certainly the first time that they felt like their cake has been stolen before they've had a slice to eat, and that's where we're at. It's been ridiculous.
I think it is ridiculous too. I mean, look, and I actually think some of their coaches' consternation publicly is a little ridiculous. But it's neat. The bottom line is, like I said, Texas is spreading its wings differently and more authoritatively than it has in years past. In part, it's been helped by their winning. And so I think that that's part of it. But the bigger piece to me is that Georgia is acting like it only happens to them from Texas or what have you. You got to remember, Texas lost 2 legacies from in-state to bigger NIL deals from out-of-state teams. So Caden Finley, the wide receiver out of Lido, we followed him. His dad has been on our show, Jermichael, and former Longhorn, great player, etc. Wanted his son to go to Texas. Notre Dame came in and offered a bigger deal. Okay. Jalen Lott, dad played at Texas, All-American track guy. Mom, Texas. Oregon came in and offered a figure that they couldn't do anything about. So my point being, Georgia acting like they're getting picked on is hilarious. I mean, it's just ridiculous. It's just recruiting. Now, I think what really makes them sore, CJ, or pissed off, is that, Georgia currently, even though they have the number 2 ranked class, I don't think they have a commitment from the top 5 players in the state of Georgia. And Texas has now gotten the number 1 player in the state of Georgia 2 consecutive years. Last year it was Justice Terry. This year it's Tyler Atkinson. And so Texas is the fall guy for them, in my opinion. Big bad Texas raining on their parade. So whatever. I'm not real worried about it. I think Steve Sarkeesian is worried this much about it. Georgia fans, and I will say this, they were on top of the college football world for 2 consecutive years. Let's see what they do this year. The proof is going to have to come, because they've gone through a coordinator change where their offense didn't look as good last year. Okay. Now they're going through a quarterback change with it. Let's see what Georgia looks like this year. Defense will be good again. You know that. But.
Oh, yeah. And they're specialists, apparently, Bobby. I
saw you say that. What was the stat that you threw out there about their specialists?
Yeah, so it's pretty crazy. I don't think I've ever seen this before. But when the all SEC teams were released, the first team all specialists, so your kicker, your punter, your long snapper, your kickoff specialist, all-purpose back, and kickoff returner, every single one of them, Georgia Bulldogs. So they swept the preseason first team for all the specialists. I don't think I've ever seen that before. But you see Jack Bomeister down there starting off the second team unit for the Longhorns. But there you go.
What was the first team? Show the first team again.
There we go. Sorry, I was trying to zoom in on it.
Is that punter the same one that tore his ACL against Texas? It is, isn't it?
I believe so.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
That is crazy. I mean, is that because that's the only body that they just said, "Oh, just fill in Georgia there"? I've never heard of Bo Gardner before.
Long
snappers, if you could name 2 or 3 across the country, I'd be a little surprised.
Yeah, exactly. That's a crazy one to project.
That is very wild. More super chats this morning, man. We got a ton of them. The chat is moving. So this is from Jay. Thank you, Jay. He says, "What a fun blur it's been in Longhorn recruiting. But are there any more highs left?"
I do not believe so at this time. That we've run through that group. The next person that is slated to make a decision is Devon Benjamin out of Southern California, the defensive back that Texas really, really likes. But of course, other teams really, really like him as well, including Oregon and Michigan. We'll see where that recruitment goes. But Texas obviously involved with that recruitment at this point. But he won't announce until August 2nd through 5th. I think there's a doubt on which day that's going to be at this time. But right now, I do not believe there are more highs, at least not in the 2026 recruiting cycle. I'm not talking about 2027. So that's a different story.
And then Cinco de Mayor says, "I am heading up to the Horseshoe for the opener with my son. Are there any OTF pregame plans in Columbus?" Hook 'em.
Yes, absolutely. We're going to be doing a pregame show. I've got notes into the folks that handle the tailgates at Ohio Stadium. So hopefully we'll have a tailgate up there. I don't know if it's going to be as big as the one we had in Michigan, but we'll see what we can do and go from there. Definitely going to be plans. I'll be up there starting on Thursday, I believe. The game is not until Saturday, obviously. So I've still got some work to do on my end on that stuff. CJ will be up there as well, and I'm sure he'll stop by. I'm not sure Jerry or Jeff will join us, but should be fun. We'll be up there, ready to go.
Oof.
By the way, 9 days away until fall camp, guys. It's almost here. I mean, you could say what you want, but 9 days away. What is this, Syrup Sailor? 40 days, seen Superman twice to distract myself. My wife and son went to go see that the other day. 40 days, though. Hey, who is your favorite number 40? There's one that comes to my mind immediately that I hope you have a picture of, Blake.
I can get one.
As we talk about recruiting, this literally was one of the biggest recruiting wins in the Mack Brown era. And it came at a time when Texas hadn't been winning big on the recruiting trail. And that is, you know, drum roll, please, as you're getting it ready here.
We're getting there slowly but surely.
Okay.
I'm not on my normal computer, so I work a little bit slower on this one, Bobby. There we go.
That's Corey Redding, guys. He was the number 40 that I think, besides his play on the field, he was a fire starter in the city of Houston for Texas. I think his commitment, I'm not saying it paved the way or actually landed Vince Young, but he was the first big-time commitment for Mack Brown in the city of Houston when he started at Texas. A year later, Texas landed Vince Young, or 2 years later, whenever it was. Also, you mentioned Lance Jackson. He's actually physically bigger than Corey, but he's a true freshman out of Texarkana. He's the current number 40 on the roster as well.
I was just laughing at those thigh pads.
What were the thigh pads? Let's see them.
Look at that thing. That's an old school thigh pad right there. Kids these days don't even wear knee pads.
See, that's what you call that old school. That's just thigh pads to me.
No, that looks like old school to me.
You're just a young buck.
Oh, man. All right. Jeff Calloway here says, Sark proving he recruits quality over quantity, having the fewest amount of recruits compared to the other top 5 recruiting class programs. Hook 'em.
Look at that top end of the class. Look at what Texas has been able to add over the last 3 cycles as well. That's a lot of quality. And look, I've heard Sark talk about it plenty. The number of guys that he prioritizes from winning programs, from teams that come from good high school coaches, ultimately guys that have won state championships. They know the grind. They know the ultimate goal at the end of the year. Those are the levels of guys and the characters that they want to add to their program. And evidently that's been doing pretty well on the field. Texas, of course. I've tried to keep track of guys who have won state championships at the high school level. Last cycle, I believe there were 7 Longhorns who signed while earning themselves a place in the state championship game. And that doesn't include a KJ Lacey, who ended up just a player too shy his senior year. So stacking those guys keeps that momentum going in workouts and off seasons, making sure that hunger remains, in which Sarkeesian said yesterday as well. We have a hungry football team after just, that's Matthew.
Matthew says Bobby also calls leather helmets real helmets.
I can't believe Matthew's up this early in the morning. So how about that, Matthew? Matt's one of those late sleepers because he works well into the night. Hey, you talk about quality over quantity, though, and I was just writing this down. I think there's some truth to it, clearly. Quarterback, number 1 ranked quarterback. Running back, depending on which list you look at, 1 through 3. Defensive tackle, depending on which list you look at, 1 or 2. Linebacker, number 1. Yeah, that's quality. That's what that is. It's not even quality. It's just the elite nature of how they're recruiting right now. Does that make sense to everybody? That's just the elite nature of who they're offering and going after, in my opinion.
All right, so the loin girder with the super chat says, Bobby, what's next for Longhorn recruiting? We have 21 now. How many more do you see Texas adding this cycle?
I still think Texas gets up to 26 to 28. I don't know that there's a clear path of how they're going to get there. So it's going to be a more circuitous route. Like 2 weeks ago, I started saying, look, I think they're going to get to 20 to 21 by August 1. And I kind of knew the game plan. Now it's kind of, okay, deep breath. You got through this stretch. and you got guys that you really wanted. Let's go watch them play their senior year. Let's stay on the ones that we know we want to stay on that committed elsewhere. And then let's go find some guys that may open up late. Now, I've mentioned this before. Look, Michigan has good players committed to them right now. They really do. What happens if Michigan and Sharon Moore have to part ways because Michigan flops again this year? I mean, it's those guys then all of a sudden become, I don't want to say free agents, but they certainly reopen or relook at their recruiting. What about other teams that something similar may happen to? What if USC, frankly, and Lincoln Riley spit the bit? There are a lot of guys like that, a lot of teams that could be positioned that way, that Texas may go back in on. But I would also say there are going to be guys like Kellen Wiley last year that Texas really went hard after, like Grayson Littleton, who hadn't committed anywhere. Texas went back in and looked at him harder, and now they absolutely love him as a true freshman. So I think it's going to be a mix. Like, there's not just any one certain way that this is going to go. I think that the first 21 have gone a certain way. Now, we'll see what happens with Devon Benjamin. Perhaps he makes that 22, but I think it's going to be a mix and match scenario from here on. And in part, I think this is what they got to where they wanted to be virtually by the beginning of August. So I think that everything looks good. Everything looks really, really good right now for the Longhorns.
Well, before we move on, I need to tell everyone about one of our sponsors today, one I know very well, and that's Huel. And if you're constantly on the move, or maybe you're just tired of skipping meals, Huel has you covered. Their today's sponsor, spelled Huel, and their Black Edition ready to drink is a total game changer. It's a complete meal in one bottle, 35 grams of protein, 27 vitamins and minerals, high fiber, low sugar. You're going to feel full, focused, and ready for your day. There's no prep, no cleanup, just grab it and go. And Huel's already sold over 500 million meals around the world, and now it's your turn to try it. New customers get 15% off plus a free gift at Huel.com when you use promo code ONTexas. And it's a perfectly balanced meal while saving you time. It's designed by experts to provide all the nutrients your body needs from a meal. Huel takes the guesswork out and time out of healthy eating. No prep, no cooking. That's what I love about it. I don't always have time to whip up a new meal, so I can just grab Huel out of the fridge and I'm ready to go with a complete meal. It saves time. It saves money. So start saving your own time and money by heading over to Huel.com. You're going to get 15% off plus a free gift for new customers when you use promo code ONTexas at Huel, Huel.com. Please see the description for terms and conditions. Skip the stress, not the nutrition. Try Huel today for complete nutrition bottled. Well, we have a lot more questions to get to this morning. Super chats continue to roll in, so we're going to jump right back into them. This one from Reckless Trey. And Trey says, I still think we could use at least one of the following positions: offensive lineman, wide receiver, tight end, and corner. Who comes to mind at those positions for y'all? Hook 'em.
That's a great question.
I agree with him. Go ahead, CJ.
I think the one spot that I might disagree at is corner. I think Texas did a fine job with Samari Matthews. Hayward Howard Jr. has some length to him. And look, you could even throw a Jaheim Riley in there who's is going to play nickel, start at nickel, has some versatility, safety, outside corner as well at Austin Anderson, previously at LBJ. So I think cornerback's taken care of, especially with the depth of that room. But offensive line, Texas is going to stay on Malachi Lee. Look, I think that to me is the biggest dog available, given what Texas has done in the Flipmas cycle before. Malachi Lee is one of my favorite recruits in this cycle at 6'7", 320 pounds, moves differently. At wide receiver, look, we'll see about Jalen Lott. We'll see about Caden Finley. Ultimately, as this season continues, 4 or 5 months from now, do you really want to go all the way up to Oregon? Do you really want to spend winters in Indiana? We'll see, and I think maybe that Texas push will get certainly stronger as the months continue. And then tight end, absolutely. Does Texas stay on a Mark Bowman? Is it a one of these Georgia guys or a Hezzy Kent. Look, it's going to be really interesting, as well as Keawe Brown out of California. Texas had plenty of options in the summer. Obviously, that's since gone different directions, but tight end must remain an option for the Longhorns in this cycle. But of those four, the most important to me is an offensive lineman.
I think about it, CJ, and we've talked about this at length. I think that the numbers at those positions, 0 to 1 wide receivers, so they might not go on another wide receiver unless they see somebody they really like. And part of that has to do with what they might do with Jermaine Bishop. Is he a corner or is he a wide receiver? So think about that. Tight end, I also have listed 0 to 1. I think they might be more inclined to take an inline tight end in this cycle, given the fact that they like Emory Winston and Nick Townsend so much, that are true freshmen that aren't necessarily inline guys by their nature and their size. And so that's the other one. I still think they're going to take a defensive end. They're going to try to add a defensive end. I know that Jake Kruel has been mentioned. He's out of IMG. And then you also have to think about Trenton Henderson out of Pensacola, who's committed to LSU. Just a tremendous player. I doubt Texas gives up. They might go one more defensive tackle, too. They have 4. But I think they want a linebacker to add. Right now, they only have 2. And that hasn't been a position that they've overloaded. In 2024, they took 1 in Anthony Smith. Last year, they only got 2 in Bo Barnes and Jonathan Cunningham. They wanted 3 in this cycle. They've got 2 right now. So I think they still got to get 1 more.
Well, earlier we were talking about state of recruiting when it comes to Texas, recruiting in the state of Texas. And CJ, you actually just tweeted this a moment ago. Let's look at how the in-state programs in Florida are recruiting their own state. And you said, looking at the top 20 players in the state of Florida for the 26th class, and boy, is it ugly for the in-state schools. Of those top 20 prospects, 19 are committed, yet only 4 are committed to an in-state school, 2 to Florida, 1 to Miami, and 1 to Florida State.
I know in the political landscape, borders are a hot topic. In the state of Florida, there's no such thing. Those top prospects are going everywhere, right? Texas has 3 of the top 10 now with Dia Bell, Derrick Cooper, James Johnson. You start looking around at where else these kids are going. You got Calvin Russell going to Syracuse. You got a player in the top 20 going to UCLA. I mean, the in-state schools in Florida, quite frankly, they're having no success retaining the top talent in the state of Florida. And obviously that's been a big, hit for Florida State. Look, a team that's done great or did great in the portal for 1 year. We've seen then if you miss on the portal and you don't have the in-state support to back it up, what'd they go, Matthew? I hope he's still in the chat. Maybe we can hear from him. But I believe it was 2-10, right? Miami's certainly not been where they want to go. But look, I kept track of where these guys went. 1 to USC, 1 to Syracuse. LSU, Georgia has 2. Ole Miss, Clemson, Texas A&M, Ohio State, Oregon, Notre Dame, UCLA. They're going everywhere in the state of Florida. And by my money's worth, it's not like Florida State, Miami, or Florida have necessarily dominated the out-of-state in their own right.
Talk about 2 teams and 2 programs that went in opposite directions, coming off a very strong 2023 season. Think about this. Florida State went undefeated in 2023 until they got to their bowl game. Texas made it to the national semifinals. Okay. So that at that point, both teams had supposedly arrived, right? Well, look at what happened in 2024. Texas repeated its semifinal berth. Florida State went 2-10. When Steve Sarkeesian gets to the mic, like he did at SEC Media Days, and says, we didn't want to be one-year wonders, that's absolutely fundamentally what he's talking about. That's all I'll say as it relates to Florida State. It's a good stat. Good stat.
Thank you.
Matt doesn't think so. Our next super chat this morning from Tex Fan. Thank you, Tex Fan. He says, can you guys comment that now you've had a recruiting class of top 5 in 2020, or 5 in 2022, 3 in 23, and 1 in 24. Now those classes are taking over in production on the field, starts, games played, big road wins, etc.
So I don't know what else to say, but I've said it multiple times and I'll say it again. The depth on this roster is freaky. Okay. I mean, there are a half dozen players in this past recruiting class, just in the 2025 recruiting class, that could start in the mid 2015, in the 2015 team, 2014 team. I mean, and none of them will at Texas as true freshmen this year. So I all I can do is compare to what most people have seen. I don't want to say this because I don't want to get too many hopes up, because you still got to go win games. But Texas is building a juggernaut. I mean, it feels a little bit ridiculous to me. And I mean that in a good way. How do I articulate that to make everybody understand that? I think people get it when they start seeing 5-star after 5-star after 5-star line up to play for the Longhorns. I mean, you get it. Intuitively, you get it. But you also want to pinch yourself at the same time, because you feel like it's a dream, maybe. You know what I mean? It's like, really? Is this really happening to Texas? And the answer is yes, it is. It really is happening. Now, they got to go win games this year to keep that, hamster wheel running. But if they win again this year, the reception that they get, I told y'all this back in January, the reception Texas was getting on the road was the best it's been in the Sark era. And that was coming off a number 1 class. Now, I don't know that they're going to get to a number 1 class this year, but it's the whole Bum Phillips, Earl Campbell quote. I don't know if he's the best, but it sure don't take long to call the roll. When you start talking about elite college programs right now, it ain't taking long to call the roll, and Texas's name is being called. So, look, I very strong belief in what Texas is doing from top to bottom right now. And I love, this is the other thing. I love the fact that Steve Sarkeesian can sit there and give you proof. We had 5 running backs in the NFL draft in the last 3 years. That's not talk. That's not promising things. That's just facts. Hard to beat facts in life.
Right.
And what do you think, CJ? You have anything to add to that?
I like going back to the spring. Jerry was on the road down from, Alabama to Georgia down to Florida. I was down in New Orleans. And at that same time, we kind of had the same experience. It was, when talking to recruits and you hear Texas, it's more I'd like to hear from Texas. Hey, if they came calling, I'd listen. That they're winning. They produce. Those recruits look like they live a fun life on campus. That's been a change. And obviously winning changes that. Steve Sarkeesian and his staff making sure that the pieces are in place for continued just really tough competitiveness on the field, plus getting developed and going to the NFL. Recruits, that really resonates with them. We were down in Atlanta, obviously, last week for SEC Media Days. Jerry and I went up to Grayson to go watch a 4-school practice, and July 17th, that's crazy. I loved it for Georgia high schools that they get to do that in the middle of July. But we were talking to a recruit out there who's going to blow up, right? Going to have a lot of offers by the time that it's all said and done. And we asked that, had you heard from Texas at all? He said no. And then we said, if Texas came calling, would you have interest? Eyes lit up. And I didn't expect that to be the case from, someone from the Atlanta area. Yet, obviously, with the Tyler Atkinson commitment, with the Justice Terry commitment, you can now point to other top prospects in your state that you've always grown up in saying, hey, it's a cool thing to do to go to Texas. And now you can point to just about every school or every state in the South and say, one of the top players is going to Texas and they're having success. And that's not been something that I've always seen in my Texas lifetime. But now that it's here and the way that Texas can just poach and pick who they want to go after, it's a recipe for success as long as the winning is on the field. And with the way that they've stacked talent, Bobby, I don't see the winning disappearing anytime soon.
I love what you just described. It's a mentality shift. It's a mentality shift from, oh, I'm hearing from Texas and they offered me yada, 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 right? Now it's, oh, I want to hear from Texas. That's a total shift from what it was 4 or 5 years ago, which is part of what I wrote.
Yep.
I mean, it's great stuff, CJ. Great first-hand account of something like that happened to you just a week ago.
Right.
We have a couple of super chats from Jeff Carey this morning. Jeff, thank you. Says Sark continues his dominant recruiting even under the ever-changing rules. OTF has done a great job in its prognosis. Thanks, OTF. And then Jeff also adds, Georgia plays the fake underdog role very well.
That is so true, isn't it? Oh, we've only won 2 national championships and we only have X amount of players in the NFL, but woe is me. Can't believe it's all transactional these days because, Georgia's never paid players.
Hey, transactional over correctional, I guess, is the saying. I'm just saying.
20 plus players involved with the law from Georgia in the last 2 years.
2 this past week.
Yeah, I know. One of them a recruit.
No, 3 this past week.
Oh, 3?
Yep. 3.
Hell.
I forgot the recruit. I wasn't counting the recruit.
I wouldn't either.
And maybe, in all seriousness, I mean, it's the old political deflection, right? Maybe if I talk about something else that'll get fans upset, they won't look under the hood about what's really going on. I don't know. Could be. He's playing chess and we're just playing checkers, CJ. That's what it is.
Okay, let's see here. Jerry's Jack Link says, let's just be honest, guys. This is why we joined the SEC. Would we be having these kind of recruiting battles in the Big 12? Boring.
Yes. Yes, I agree with you. I think that I will give, and I'm going to give Jerry his due credit here. Jerry has been saying this for a decade. It's just more fun. It doesn't just mean more. It's just more fun because the stakes are higher.
Yep.
So, you win some. I mean, look, you could get, and in the SEC, you can get pantsed pretty quick. I mean, don't forget that 2-week run was an anomaly for Texas, right? Where they lost a bunch of guys and everybody's like, oh, whoa. Now it's a little bit different, but I have to tell you that it does. The stakes are raised and it is more fun. And CJ, did you come up with that or did you just think of that in the moment? Were you?
No, sometimes my brain does something right. And that hit me about 2 minutes ago. So.
Well, I mean, look, no team, I will say this when it comes to things like that, no team is perfect. But Georgia seems to have a number of those issues right now.
And we got more Georgia comments here in form of super chat. Joshy Manning, father of one, thank you for the super chat. Says, y'all notice how well Georgia plays the victim? They've gotten really good at it. It probably comes from how often they need to plead the fifth. And then Matthew Miller, 27 arrests and 25 wins the last 2 years. Those dogs don't bite; they drive drunk.
Oh boy! Hey, let's not turn this into goodness. Hey, let's not
talk about Hellcats.
Yeah, let's not turn this into a rail on Georgia because they have. I mean, while they've had their off-field issues, they have been a model of success on field. They really have 2 national championships, an SEC championship last year over Texas. That they are, and part of the reason, maybe Texas makes fun of this is because there's a little bit of aspirational thought there as far as their winning is concerned on the field. But I don't want to turn this into a bash Georgia fest. They'll get theirs in due time off the field, but they've been really, really good on the field. So
yeah. All right, let's see here. More super chats, but first, Bobby, I just realized the time here. I need you to tell everyone about John Donovan and Longhorn Wealth Management Group one more time.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you to our sponsor, John Donovan, President, Longhorn Wealth Management. As a proud UT alum, John served for 15 years as a Dallas, Texas Exes chapter board member and is now helping lead the build-out of the Collin County, Texas Exes chapter. If you live in Collin County and want to get involved, shoot John an email and he will get you added to the Collin County chapter email list for all upcoming Texas Exes events like their happy hour this Thursday at Dirty Birds in Plano. While everyone was rightfully focused on football recruiting, John also wanted to send out a huge congratulations to Texas Ex Scottie Scheffler for his victory at the Open Championship in Ireland. What an accomplishment, earning his fourth major in the identical number of days since his first major, as Tiger had done. Truly inspiring. John wants to inspire all OTF fans to take advantage of his free 90-minute private consultation to learn how working with a certified financial planner can help you maximize your wealth, minimize your taxes, and ensure your legacy. Take advantage of his free 90-minute private consultation. Either call John and his team at Longhorn Wealth 972-707-4900 or go online at longhornwealth.net and schedule your meeting today. Hook 'em from the team over at Longhorn Wealth and John.
Well, we have time for just a couple more questions or comments here, and we got one more super chat. This one from Isaiah Rangel, that says, "How was it at Media Day when Texas got Atkinson and Johnson? Can you go in depth on that? And who will Texas go for next?"
I'll say this because it was really interesting seeing Steve Sarkeesian and Kirby on the same day talking. And obviously what we knew ahead of time, it was almost, I speak in memes pretty often, but when Kirby was starting the day up on the podium, it was almost the whole, hey, do you think he knows? You know, does he know what's coming down the road? I'm sure he did. And if he did, I mean, he had a great poker face, but by the end of the day, and I walked out following Steve Sarkeesian out of the College Football Hall of Fame, and it was right after Tyler Atkinson had committed on McAfee, and obviously James Johnson had just flipped after Sarkeesian was off the podium. There was a smile, and he was on the phone with a smile on his face, saying, "Hey, we got the defensive lineman. I'm pretty stoked right now." So we also bumped into him yesterday after he landed Derrick Cooper on the phone again, smile on his face, sitting there with Jamal Finner, sitting there with Chris Gilbert, walking through the convention center in San Antonio. And it kind of hit me at the time, but that's just what he does. And there was a tweet at the time, I believe, I forget who said it, but it was Sark's walking around Atlanta like he's a mob boss, just pulling strings from the backside. I think it was Josh Pate.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what it felt like, a mafia hit, in the sense that, oh yeah, I'm coming to your town. There's nothing you can do about it. And I'm leaving with two of the top players, one from your class and the other from your state. Just smooth moving behind the scenes, and then basically getting the call saying, hey, it's clear, right? You know, and make me want to go watch The Sopranos again. But point being, it's been cool to see him maneuver that direction, and Texas certainly benefiting on the recruiting trail, and that will eventually turn into wins on the field as well.
Well, we opened up talking about Derrick Cooper, so let's close talking about Cooper because we got quite a few questions on him. And let's start with this one from David Keith Williams. We'll take a couple of these about him. He says, Derrick Cooper is clearly a heavily used athlete that plays all over the field. However, his running back production is less than half that of KJ Edwards and Xavier Crowell. Is that an issue for y'all?
Issue? No, actually a little bit preferable. Keep the miles off the legs if you can until he gets to your, to your program, and then hey, let him run free. It was interesting. We came across the Derrick Henry high school stats on the winning drive last week. You know, he ran the ball 450 times his senior year. You know, he had 55 rushing touchdowns. You know, he had 4,200 total rushing yards in his senior season alone. sorry to go off on that tangent, but look, for the life of a running back, and Texas obviously hit by that a little bit last year, if he can get to Texas without having to touch the ball 200 more times, sign me up, because we've seen the talent. We've seen the frame. We know what he can do with the ball in his hand. I don't have an issue with it one bit.
The numbers will increase this year. First of all, he's only a junior in high school, but and he's not been the focal point. But I would say this about Derrick Cooper: his yards per carry is not less appreciably. And so while the tread on the tires is a good sign, the yards per carry is a big one for me. And he does play, and Jerry mentions this, he plays at a smaller school, and so he plays both ways. Jerry likened it somewhat to what Jonathan Brooks did at Hallettsville. I mean, Derrick Cooper plays until he cramps.
Yeah.
So if they want him to play on defense, it's hard to feed him the ball 30 times a game. So that has a little bit to do with it. State champ, guy that look, I don't know how else to say this other than I'm a huge, huge fan of Derrick Cooper, and I'm not concerned about production in that category.
Rudy Torres wants to know, is Derrick Cooper faster than Jaden Blue?
No,
he's not.
No. Jaden Blue's fast.
Yeah, Jaden Blue, and the thing about Jaden Blue that was necessarily different than anybody other than maybe Keelan Robinson in recent past is his 0 to 5 yards. I mean, Jaden Blue had a burst. Derrick Cooper has a burst, but it's more that long burst. Jaden Blue and Keelan Robinson had that first 5 yards that looked just a little bit faster than everybody else's.
And this will be our final one for the day, fellas. This one from King Me says, how much does Cooper fit into Sark's offense?
Big back, can run inside zone, can run outside zone, can handle pass protection because of his size. I mean, people minimize that, but that's huge. Has good hands out of the backfield. He's a perfect fit. That's one of the things I love about it.
Yeah. The hands are a big part for me. And having listened to a little bit of Chad Scott yesterday, we obviously know that was a priority for Tashard Choice. When he was recruiting guys, it's going to maintain a big piece of the Texas running back piece. I've also seen some questions about comparisons for Derrick Cooper. I'm not great at comparisons. I'll put my hand up. I'm not a noted comparison guy, but I see some David Johnson, some 2015, 2016 David Johnson, and I'm about 6'1". David Johnson was doing this about 230 pounds. He did it on the Arizona Cardinals for folks that don't remember. He didn't have a super long career, but that 2016 year for him where he was a first-team All-Pro, 2,100 receiving total yards, all-purpose yards, he moves very similar in the sense that he makes you miss in the hole, and he's got that 4.5, right in that high 4.4 speed to break away. Contact balance is key, but really it's the vision and the ability to make guys miss at the second level while being contacted, right? It's not a true juke stick guy in which he's going to make guys look completely foolish, but it's going to be enough to the point where that contact that is hit at the point of attack is not enough to get you to the ground, and it just kind of brushes them off. So that's what I liked a lot about Derrick Cooper. And that year with David Johnson, excuse me, I think there's something to that. So that's where I'm throwing my hat in the ring for a comparison. Fair.
I think the toughness that he runs with, along with the speed, that's what's rare. Okay, you don't get guys that are 6'1", 205, and they end up 210 in college. They end up 220 to 225. Mm-hmm. It's just the way of the world. And you end up with a guy that is tough to bring down, has subtle moves. I mean, I'm a big, big fan of Derrick Cooper.
As Texas fans should be.
Yes, I mean, no doubt. Mm-hmm. Just a great – hey, as we close up, I just want to say this, just a great week of recruiting for the University of Texas. Yeah. From last Tuesday to this morning, 3 5 stars, in my opinion. So hats off to Steve Sarkeesian, Brandon Harris, Chris Gilbert, Jamal Finner, John Michael Jones, Chad Scott, Johnny Nate. I mean, all of them. Jeff Banks, congrats. You did a hell of a job for the University of Texas. You earned your paycheck. I'll put it that way.
Uh-oh, we got a super chat that just came in. So we aren't getting out of here yet because Jonah Williams Enthusiast wants to know, what's the biggest weakness of the program at the moment?
Lack of experience going into this year.
Yeah.
If there's a reason Texas loses 3 or 4 games this year, it's going to be because of inexperience. It won't be because of talent.
Yeah.
So
on the
go ahead.
flip side to that, I was thinking of just immediate playtime. And that speaks to youth in its own right, but depth is there as long as you can get guys cycled in and stay healthy. Look, I think that's it.
Okay, guys, well, that's going to do it for today's episode of Coffee and Football presented by John Donovan and Longhorn Wealth Management Group. I want to thank John and Longhorn Wealth Management Group along with Huel and Duck Camp for sponsoring today's show. Of course, thank you all for tuning in as well. The questions, the super chats, be sure to head on over to ontexasfootball.com. Become a member using promo code OTFOG, and you'll save a little bit of money. You can get a full year for just $39.95. That's for new subscribers only over at ontexasfootball.com. Promo code OTFOG. Bobby, as far as the YouTube channel goes, what do you got later today?
CJ and Jeff going to talk a little bit in I think around noon today before they get back and headed to the San Antonio Coaches Convention. They're going to talk about what they heard from not only Steve Sarkeesian, but Mark Orfe and Chad Scott yesterday. And then Jerry should be home in time for Talking Ball tonight. So he's going to have a long road home, but hopefully he and I are able to take your questions later tonight as well. If we have anything more news break, we will definitely step in and release that to you guys. Also, I wanted to mention this. Our message boards at On Texas Football have never been more warmly received than they have lately. Thank you all for all of you who participate. It makes it a lot of fun during the day to go on there and read some comments. We will drop news and notes as the day progresses, anything up to date for you guys to read. Again, that's on texasfootball.com.
Yeah. We will be back same time, same place tomorrow. Hope you all have a great day. And for CJ Vogel and Bobby Burton, I'm Blake Monroe, and we'll see you then.